back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We're going to be joined with Alex Jones at the bottom of the hour. He's going to talk about the global meltdown that has already begun. And, of course, part of that is the restructuring and the collapse of our economy. And one of the ways they do that is to massively increase the welfare rolls. Our country cannot absorb the massive amount of immigrants that are coming in. They very well know that. They've done social study experiments about this. Cloward and Piven were two of the social scientists who put forth a theory that this is exactly what needed to be done. But, of course, there's another aspect of this, and that is the NAFTA aspect. After enacting this into law 20 years ago, they now want to make it an accomplished fact. And we have some information about that we're going to play in a few minutes. But I wanted to get back to what I was talking about just before the break, because we played that quote from Nancy Pelosi saying, "I wish I could take all these children home." Well, of course, she can't take all these children home. Why? Because she can't support them. And the same thing that keeps her from taking all these children home is what makes it impossible for America to take all the poor children of the world. If I wanted to adopt 100 children, I would be stopped by our government. I would not be able to pass the income means test that would allow me to adopt that number of children. I wouldn't have the size house that I need for 100 kids. And we cannot bring all the poor children of the world into America. What they're trying to do with this is to create a cycle of dependency and to have an economic collapse. If they truly wanted to help these children, they could help them by removing many of the impediments that are bringing their countries down. Of course, it's been the World Bank and the bankers who have, in places like Venezuela, getting 700% on their return on their investment. And the World Bank under Robert McNamara, who was essentially accused and truly was rent-seeking, putting them on welfare status so that he could indebt and collapse those countries through debt. And then we added to that a war on drugs, a war where for our cocaine, we run the Iran-Contra scandal for cocaine, bring that stuff in with a crack cocaine in L.A., as well as the war on drugs in Afghanistan. When it was under the Taliban, they were only supplying 10% of the world's supply of heroin. After the American Army occupied them, that has soared. Record production each year. It's now over 90% of the world's supply comes from Afghanistan. We're helping the farmers there to grow it. We're importing it. And yet we are exporting violence and weapons and arms into all of these countries all over the world, especially in Central and South America. So if we really wanted to help them, there are ways to do it other than bringing them here. It is impractical for us, no matter how much we want to do it. And this is what many of my Christian friends need to understand. It is misplaced compassion to say that you're going to bring all of these children into America and take care of them. You can't do that any more than you could bring all these children into your home, or that Nancy Pelosi could bring them into her home. But I'm afraid she doesn't really want to do that. She wants to bring them into the community. She wants the community to be their parents. Just as Plato said in the Republic, they want these kids to see the government as their family. They're going to treat them better than they treat our veterans. They're already doing that. We're going to provide them with free rides for a college education. They're already doing that. They give them in-state tuition, whatever state they wish to go to. You and I, as American citizens, can't do that, but they can do that. They will give them free ride tuition at the universities. And if a middle-class American student wants to do that, they're going to become debt slaves to these very banks who will not release them from that education debt, even if they declare bankruptcy. But of course, if you want to get rid of that indebtedness to the bankers, you can always sign up as an indentured servant to Obama's Youth Corps, or to become a teacher, or to do something else for the government. See, if you turn your life over to the government for a few years as an indentured servant, maybe they'll give you a break on that, because it's all about exerting control.
Celebrate the spirit of freedom and liberty upon which our nation was founded at InfoWarsShop.com. Molon Lave is ancient Greek for come and take it. This popular design combines both classic Greek Spartan imagery with modern M16 assault rifles. Now available in women's tees and proudly made in the USA. Celebrate the spirit of 1776 with the George Washington brass belt buckle or this incredibly sharp-looking 1776 hat. Badass. And be sure to check out the new arrivals at InfoWars Life, where you can prepare your body to perform at peak levels with Survival Shield, Nascent Iodine, Super Male Vitality, and Fluoride Shield. And wake up, America. Immune Support Blend is the healthy choice for the gourmet coffee lover. So get incredibly high-quality, freedom-based products and help fund the revolution at InfoWarsShop.com.
And that's what we see at the borders is a meltdown, a collapse at the border. Before I go to the clip from Petraeus and Pelosi talking about how they view our new country that we're starting to see now, I wanted to cover what she had to say about these children. Now, she mentioned several times about their dignity. She used that phrase at least twice in her short speech. But of course, they don't give us any dignity. They don't even give our children any dignity when the TSA comes calling, either at the airport or at the bus station or the railroad station or at the roadblocks. They're not giving us dignity, but they're saying that they need to treat these children with dignity. They need to treat them differently than they treat the rest of us. And that report from Alex that this will end the TSA, that is now live on our website as well as on YouTube. You need to see that. We need to point out the hypocrisy of what is going on within the country versus what's going on at the borders. And of course, this is all being done by the same bureaucracy, Homeland Security, created in the wake of the 9/11 false flags. Everything about this agency is a lie, and that's what we see happening now. They've taken over law enforcement, they've taken over the border, and look at what they're doing. They're turning the police into a militarized occupational force that thinks that they're fighting a counterinsurgency war here in America. That's everything that they're training for. And just so that they're not disappointed, they're going to bring in drug cartels into America so we can have a real war just like they do in Mexico. And of course, we've been driving that war for them in Mexico. But there's a lot of corruption in Mexico as well. Look at this article. Mexican military incursion assisting drug smugglers in the USA have a shootout with Texas police. This is by Sarah Carter. It was at the end of the week last week. They said Mexican soldiers and civilian smugglers had an armed standoff with nearly 30 U.S. law enforcement officials on the Rio Grande in Texas last Monday, according to Texas police and the FBI. Now, I find it interesting that the local Texas police, the Texas police and the local police there have a very different take on it than the FBI. First, we were told that, well, you know, they came across, I think it was accidental or whatever. Then as the week went on, the FBI comes out with a statement and says, well, bad guys in 3 vehicles ended up on the border. People with Humvees who appeared to be with the Mexican army were involved with the 3 vehicles and getting them back across. Now, we're told by the local law enforcement and Texas police that what was happening was the Mexican military was escorting these drug smugglers across the border, as we have Homeland Security standing down the Border Patrol. It's a very different take on it versus the federal government versus the local and state law enforcement, and that's the problem. These problems are being driven by Homeland Security. They're being driven by the federal government. They're the ones who are pushing the police to shoot first and not even ask questions. They're changing the rules of engagement. They're changing the way the police treat the public. They're making the police paranoid about their safety more so than they are about the safety of the public. That's never a concern for them anymore if they follow the kinds of training that they're getting in New Mexico and all over the country. Mexico has been leading this with their shootings in Albuquerque, with their no hesitation targets, but also with their shoot first policy at the New Mexico State Police Academy. And they've had instructors there resign in protest. This is being driven by the federal government. And notice that it's the FBI that is downplaying the fact that it's the Mexican federales that are coming across. So, you know, we've got our own federales. We've got our own corruption in the American government. There's always this compartmentalization. Many people who are honest law enforcement people at the local and the state level don't realize that it's the federal government that is running the drug war, that is running the drug trade, just as it was the federal government shipping arms across the border. And you had a local, or you had other law enforcement that was compartmentalized out the bottom trying to stop it and got killed. That's why Fast and Furious blew up in their face, because you had some law enforcement officers who were trying to do the real job while other law enforcement officers, quote unquote, from the federal government were actually violating the law. Why? So they could take down the Second Amendment. We also see that a study has said that all employment growth since 2000 went to immigrants. Now, this is also from the National Review. This came out on Friday. I would say it went to illegal aliens, or as they would say in New York, residents and undocumented immigrants. This is the Center for Immigration Studies, said that a net employment growth in the United States since 2000 has gone entirely to immigrants, legal and illegal. They found that there were 127,000 fewer working-age natives holding a job in the first quarter of 2014 than in 2000, while the number of immigrants with a job was 5.7 million above the 2000 level. Do you understand? Right now, that is being driven by organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and big business are pushing for cheap labor to come in. But it isn't going to be people from Central and South America that are going to be taking our jobs in just a few years. Our jobs are going to be disappearing to robots. It's not going to be the Mexicans. It's going to be the metal cans who are going to be taking people's jobs. It's going to be service sector jobs, not just manufacturing jobs. One of the first service sectors to go is going to be transportation. And that's going to happen, according to many estimates, in as little as 3 to 5 years. They're rolling back the legal restrictions. The technological advances are there for computer-driven cars, and we should be very concerned about not only the economic effect that it's going to have on the country, but also the control that it's going to allow the government to exercise. Now, I want to go to the comment that Nancy Pelosi had about abortion. Listen to, and she wasn't talking about abortion, but I want to have you think about this in terms of abortion. Listen to what she was saying about the children coming across.
If you believe, as we do, that every child, every person has a spark of divinity in them and is therefore worthy of respect, what we saw in those rooms was dazzling, sparkling array of God's children worthy of respect.
There we go. Now, this is the same woman, the same political party that is trying to force mandatory government-funded, well, the government funds abortions in many cases, but now they want to force abortion coverage on individuals and on companies. And that's a case that's coming up before the Supreme Court this week. She's talking about this divine light and that these are children of God. What about the children who are aborted? Do we not have that kind of respect for the children that have been aborted, the millions of children that have been aborted over the last several decades? That's the kind of hypocrisy that we see throughout this border collapse. Remember Hillary Clinton, she's going to be the candidate for women's issues. She's going to stand strong and show that women have arrived. And yet, I hope you've seen the tape. You need to listen to this tape of Hillary Clinton a few decades ago. It's kind of funny, her Southern accent that is still there. She was 27 at the time that she defended a pedophile rapist. She's just a couple of years older at the time this tape is made. And she's laughing about how she got this guy off. She's laughing about how he passed a polygraph, destroyed her confidence in polygraphs forever. This is the woman who is going to stand for women's rights. And Pelosi talks about children having the light of God in them as she pushes to require abortions.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done has been right.
Back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host, and I'm going to be taking some of your phone calls. Let me give you the Sunday number. It's a little bit different from the weekday number. It's 877-789-ALEX. That's 877-789-ALEX or 789-2539. Now, we've been talking about the hypocrisy of what's going on with the border collapse in so many different ways. And I want to get your take on that, on the hypocrisy, on the planned economic collapse that we see as NAFTA is going from a law, a trade agreement that they enacted 20 years ago to an accomplished fact as they destroy the borders. But I want to point out one more article here that's up on Infowars.com. Obama sends the CIA to the UK to probe terrorist, quote, breeding ground. In a pointed snub to MI5, he sends a lone wolf mission to interrogate British security experts. In other words, you guys can't really handle the terrorists in your midst, so we're going to send some CIA guys on a junket to the UK, and they're kind of taking a bit of offense to that. And it really points out the hypocrisy that we've got, again, of this story that I read just a few minutes ago about the Mexican military helping drug dealers. They're assisting these drug cartels coming across the border and get into a shootout with 30 U.S. law enforcement agents. And, of course, those are going to be state and local agents because the federal agents have been told to stand down. And the FBI, again, tries to downplay that as being any issue. And it's not just drug deals that are coming into our country uncontrolled at the border. Terrorists from any country can bring anything they wish, and yet Obama sends the CIA to the UK to help them to make sure that they aren't a terrorist breeding ground. We're not going to protect our borders, but we're going to micromanage how they handle things in their country. Just great. I want to get your take on that. Now, we had Jakari Jackson and Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs go down to the Nancy Pelosi photo op yesterday down at the border. She was there. The president of Honduras was down on our borders as well because, you know, we're all one big happy family now. And they were not allowed to go and talk to her. Even though they had sent their credentials in advance, they had gone through all the paperwork, they were held back at a distance. They were not allowed to get there because this was essentially a photo op. I don't think anybody asked any questions. I didn't see her answering any questions, but they had some questions for her, and they still asked them. Here's a clip that we've got from that.
Ms. Pelosi, your daughter said there's no way to secure the border. Did you fill her head with that nonsense, or is that because you guys just don't want to do your job?
She's rushing away. This is at a distance. They're keeping them back quite a ways. That's why he's having to shout that out. Of course, no response. Hello? Hello? No response. That's what happens. That's why they don't want us at these events, because we're going to ask them some questions. You know, we might also ask them about NAFTA. But this is what she had to say in her prepared remarks about NAFTA. And I included this now with, I've spliced this in with the remarks from General Petraeus that he made in London about America being over and being replaced with NAFTA. Here are those comments.
Anyone who comes here sees that this is a community with a border going through it.
Boldly proclaimed
this is
the coming North American decades as the title now. It's founded on recognition that if you put these three economies together, as has been the case 20 years into the North American Free Trade Act implementation, you find unique countries in terms of demographics.
We're all Americans in this hemisphere, North and South America. And this crisis, that some call a crisis, we have to view as an opportunity.
That's right. Every crisis is an opportunity if you want to extend your control. And of course, every crisis needs to have children as a part of it as well. They always have to be the cause that we're protecting. You know, the children, if they want to take away the borders, it's so that they can help children. If they want to take away our right to keep and bear arms, to protect ourselves, to keep a check and a balance against tyranny in this government, in this country, that, of course, has to be taken away to protect children. It always comes along that way. Now, Alex Jones is going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour, talking about how the global meltdown has begun. And I want people to think about how these people who are trying to exercise global control, how they operate. Look at what they've done with NAFTA. Now, of course, as Petraeus was talking about, he says, well, we're 20 years into NAFTA now. And so now we're ready for North America. And he made these remarks just before the border began collapsing. Now, Nancy Pelosi is saying we have a community that just happens to have a border running through it. Well, it's not a border anymore, not any more than the sense of the border between Texas and Oklahoma. And that's what they're looking at. They're looking at it being that kind of border. What they have done is they've operated for 20 years in their minds as a North American Union. Now they're making it an accomplished fact. In other words, they've had it as NAFTA de jure, as the law. Now they're making it NAFTA de facto, an accomplished fact. And this should really concern us in many other areas, because if you look at things like the NDAA, where they wrote a law that says that they can arrest anyone and hold them indefinitely with the military without trial, and many other things that they have done, this is the way they operate. They enact the law to cover their illegal actions. And then down the road, they say, we've had this law for 10 years now, 20 years now. Now we're going to enforce it. That's the way this is going to happen. They're going to do the same thing there that they're doing now with NAFTA. Let's go to some of your calls. Let's go to Bruce in Ontario. Bruce?
Oh, hello, David. I was calling because there was a report issued to Barack Obama in 2009 titled North America Next. And this was issued by Robert Pastor, who, authored the building a North American community in 2001. So he kind of postulated the North American community into existence. And now this report, I don't know if the guys in the booth, people at home want to look it up. It's called North America Next. It's put out by a university in Arizona.
That's North American what?
North American Next.
Net?
Next.
Next, yes.
Put out by NACTS, North American Center for Trans-Border Studies. And there's a lot of information in that report. It's maybe a 25-page report. And if you guys can find it, turn to page 15, because it says right on page 15 that what they want to do is move the internal borders away from the borders and to the factory and the farm. So that's what we are...
Well, I think it's interesting that you would have North America Next, because that was the question that David Petraeus was answering at that London conference. After America, what's next? And he said, well, that's simple. It's North America. And he said he had been talking about that with a question mark. And he says, now I've removed the question mark. So he's removed the question mark, and Homeland Security has removed the borders. Thank you very much. Yeah, people look that up. It's North America Next. Is that correct, Bruce?
Yeah, North America Next, put out by NACTS. You just search that. Turn to page 15, because that's quite significant.
All right.
For what you guys are covering.
We'll let people look that up, and we always like to give our sources on things, and we have listeners who will actually look this stuff up. That's the difference between our listeners and those who are listening to mainstream media. They don't check the sources. Check that. Find out what's going on for yourself. Now you can watch the InfoWars Nightly News streaming live as it happens for free.
Check it out at Infowars.com/show.
Continue with your calls in the next segment, but this breakdown, this collapse of the border is about economic collapse, and here's Alex Jones to break that down for you.
Thank you for joining us on this Sunday, the 29th day of June, 2014 transmission. I'm Alex Jones, coming to you from the TV studios. David Knight is in the radio studios. I could not be covering a more important issue than the one we're about to break down. It's now not denied that we're going into a global financial incremental implosion. But undoubtedly, it's clear that the orchestrated economic collapse is being accelerated. And it's crystal clear that on the ashes of this global world system, a highly autocratic, authoritarian technocracy is being established, in the words of the Bilderberg Group, the Davos Group, the EU, you name it. Europe is the model, where they appoint the leaders of Italy and Greece, where they have banker bailouts, where they grab 44% out of your bank account and pay it to billionaires who the government has signed on to their derivatives, bailing them out. This is neo-feudalism. This is economic slavery, my friends, on steroids. Now, again, it's not my opinion that a global financial economic implosion from which we're never supposed to recover is being engineered. The latest article was in the London Guardian. Pentagon preparing for mass civil breakdown. Social science is being militarized to develop operational tools to target peaceful activists and protest movements to stop the people from getting out from under the globalist. Another article in the Guardian back in 2007 got a Ministry of Defense report, Revolution, Flash Mobs, and Brain Chips, a grim vision of the future. Total police state with a brain-chipped population to control us. That is the British Ministry of Defense. You cannot make up the magnitude of the sci-fi tyranny. Let's look at a quote from Henry Kissinger, and he said similar things in a New York Times article, where he said back in 1991 in Evian, France, at a Bilderberg Group meeting, today America would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that means manufactured, that threatened our very existence. And he goes on to say it's at that time they would give in to the world government for their safety. General Petraeus a few weeks ago in the London Telegraph, speaking to the Thatcher Group, said that we're going to get rid of America and bring in a North American Union, and their own Banff Canada UN documents show they're going to use global crises to get that job done. In fact, he told the New York Times in 2009, Kissinger did, the chance for a new world order was the article that, again, crises are the way they're going to bring this in. He also told MSNBC right when Obama was elected, and CNBC separately, that all these different global crises with Obama would help bring in the New World Order. And what is the New World Order based on? Cloward and Piven, a sociology program of the Democrats, published in The Nation magazine back in '66, is just one plan under the larger Agenda 21, again, to bankrupt you and to force you to be dependent on the state and the chicken feed they hand out. Very, very similar to the systems they've used in communist countries to control populations. And under austerity, over and over and over again, things just get worse and worse. And you're not paying off your own national debt. Your country sign on to the derivatives, to the too big to fail, trillions of dollars per nation in many cases, tens of trillions in our case, and then you're a debtor to the very people that you bailed out. Now, the good news is that in places like Greece, where they've been going and even taking 44% out of some of the people's bank accounts to, quote, bail out the bankers with these bail-ins, in places like Cyprus, there has been such a revolt that they're having to start to back down as the public becomes aware of this. The New York Times bemoaned the fact that places like Spain, after many years of austerity, killing their economy further, they're now engaged in tax cuts to try to get the economy going. Kennedy cut taxes by 50%. Tax receipts doubled. The elite know if you cut taxes, it actually brings in more money on average. Then why do they want higher and higher taxes? To bankrupt the economy, then the globalist corporations are exempt from those taxes and from those regulations. Continuing now into the global economic meltdown that we know is transpiring, that we know is unfolding and being accelerated. Here's just some of the latest news. Rising food prices push up Indian wholesale inflation in May. Meat, poultry, and fish prices spike to all-time highs in the United States. You're seeing the inflation out there. International Business Times, meat, produce, dairy prices on the rise, while processed foods, grain prices remain stable. Yeah, the processed crud food. You're not crazy, America. Your grocery bill is going up fast, upwards of 2.1% in the last year, and that's with cooked federal numbers. Try doubling, ladies and gentlemen. But meanwhile, the farmers can't even make a living because it's all rigged by computers, like high-frequency trading, at the meatpacking level. And Americans can't even get jobs because the illegal aliens do that. Economic crime rises worldwide, led by theft and procurement fraud, survey shows out of Reuters. Again, corruption is accelerating, led by the Fortune 500. Las Zeta, death toll reaches 1 200,000 plus in Mexico from the phony drug war. Criminal violence rising in the Caribbean, UN report, more than doubling. And now what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, they have trains out of Central and South America called trains of death with unlimited tens of thousands a day that Mexico allows in, as long as they don't get off the train, to come up to the U.S., where the Border Patrol loads them onto Greyhound buses with vouchers and ships them anywhere they go to be dropped off wherever they want to go. We reported that 2 weeks ago. Last week, AP confirmed that the White House, ladies and gentlemen, has literally ordered this but will not give details. So our story has been confirmed, ladies and gentlemen. But the backlash against this worldwide is accelerating. They're flooding Europe with unlimited illegals right now to then be the voting bloc to vote for further socialism, further control, further banker bailouts, because they're clients of the state itself controlled by the globalist. In closing, look at this headline. Too big to audit. Large partnerships escape IRS scrutiny, GAO report shows. And this is being covered by McClatchy, AP, and others. CNS News is covering it as well. The big firms have written the regulations where the offshore globalists are exempt and don't even get audited and don't even pay taxes in most cases. But the average middle-class person, an average blue-collar worker, has had 21 taxes raised on them under Obamacare, 7 of them on people at poverty line or below. Look it up for yourself. How was that a handout to the people? Again, even the New York Times admits everything's rigged. Even Rolling Stone admits everything's rigged. But who is it rigged by? That's the key here. The global collapse is here. If millions of illegals are able to come in the next year off these trains, tens of millions more will come. It will collapse the border. It will be a crisis. And under Rex 84 declassified, they have a plan to bring in martial law to fix the problem they've created. This is the signal to implode the borders, bring in the North American Union, as General Petraeus treasonously said a few weeks ago. You either wake up, speak out, and get involved, or you will lose everything in the meltdown. They will take your bank accounts. They will take your pension funds in the name of stabilizing the system. It's all being prepared. How many times have I warned you and told you what's going to happen next? Because I'm going off the globalist-owned white papers. I read the Ministry of Defense reports, the Pentagon reports. I read what George Soros talks about. They're laughing at you and your family. This is all staged. Back to this live Sunday edition with David Knight. Don't say you weren't warned by Infowars.com. Don't say there weren't people there that told you what was happening and that you could politically speak out and stop this. This is so treasonous that they've miscalculated, and this could literally turn the tide against the New World Order. They're accelerating their plan because they're already in so much trouble. So many good things are happening. They're voting down carbon taxes in Australia. The Supreme Court ruled Obama can't shut down all the coal power plants. Good things are happening because you're waking up. Now wake up all the way, wake up others.
I'm David Knight, and that special report that we just played from Alex Jones is now live at YouTube as well as at Infowars.com. About the global collapse has begun. And how is it coming to us? It's coming to us through these open borders, through NAFTA being made an accomplished fact. 20 years after they passed the law, after we've had a couple of decades of industry being moved out of this country. Now, I'm going to go back to your calls. We're going to go to Kenny in Texas, but Kenny in Florida. But before we do, I wanted to tell you about our new Molon Lave belt buckles. This is a limited run of only 400 of these buckles per 500 per color. They are numbered on the back and say made in 1776 on the back. This is the same design, this attractive design you've seen on the T-shirts that we've got. It's a beautiful buckle. It's a great conversation starter, and it's a way to support our operation. We're not funded by the government like MSNBC and others. We're funded by selling you products that we hope you enjoy and that you can use. Things like Fluoride Shield, which we have a 25% off special on at the InfoWars store as well. Now, before I go to your comments, I just want to kind of summarize some of this hypocrisy that we've seen. Think about these things that are happening with the collapse of the border. Think about the fact, as we've got the story up on Infowars.com, we've got Texas small towns that are being bankrupted because they're providing humanitarian aid to people coming across the open borders, and yet the federal government gives them no money. Meanwhile, the federal government is giving $500 million to Syrian rebels to start a war there. Then think about those same Texas small towns that are panicking because they're suffering from violence, gang violence of these same people that are coming across. Are they getting any help with protection? No. Still, Obama is talking about sending not 300 troops, but now 500 troops, and we've also had a lot of people in the military tell us that their entire units are being deployed back to Iraq, to another war. Look at the fact that we have U.S. kids, especially middle-class kids, who are not going to get in-state tuition in any state they choose to go to. They're not going to get full ride tuition as illegal aliens do, as their children do. No, if they want to go get a college education, they're going to become indebted slaves to the government. Meanwhile, someone who doesn't live here, who hasn't been paying taxes for these universities, comes in and gets a full ride or in-state tuition. Look at the criminalization of U.S. kids even playing in their yard. As I pointed out back in September of 2012, we have a family where the kid was playing in their own yard. They got visited 4 times by the police, twice by social services. Just this last Friday, we had a father who was arrested because his kid was skipping church and a half mile away. So they arrested the father. And yet they're telling us that they need to encourage these kids to come across the border to run the gauntlet of drug cartels and pedophile prostitution rings, that's not child endangerment. No, when you let the child play in your own yard, if you're an American, that's child endangerment. But when Obama and Pelosi encourage parents to send their children across the border through these dangerous times, that's not child endangerment. Look at dignity and respect. Pelosi goes to the border and talks about how we need to do this for the dignity and the respect of the children. What about the dignity and the respect of children at TSA checkpoints at the airport and elsewhere? What about the dignity and respect that's owed our veterans at the VA? They don't get dignity and respect. They get put on a waiting list that doesn't even exist, and they die on this waiting list. Told that they're on a waiting list to get treatment, but they don't even get that. And then finally, look at the hypocrisy of the war on drugs and the war of terror, using that to create a militarized martial law, police state, surveillance state in the United States, and yet the borders are wide open, allowing any terrorist, any drug cartel to freely travel back and forth as they wish, bring anything that they want back and forth across the borders. That is the blatant hypocrisy of this planned takedown of America that is going on right now with this unprecedented collapse of the border. This is not a crisis. This is an opportunity, as Pelosi said. That's the way she sees it. All right, let's go to Kenny in Florida. Kenny.
Hey, David, great show today, man. If you guys were mainstream, we could turn this thing around in a month.
Well, we hope to. I hope you all support us at Prison Planet TV. But yes, thank you. Go ahead.
I don't remember, but I had one question. Why doesn't the governor of these border states call out the National Guard when they have absolute authority to do so? And I'll listen offline. Thank you.
Well, that's a good point. You know, why doesn't the Congress impeach the president? Why don't they do anything? Well, the simple fact, I think, Kenny, the answer is that the Republicans are as big a part of this NAFTA takedown of the United States and the planned economic collapse as the Democrats are. I think that's why they're not doing anything about it. I think they're perfectly fine with what's going on. I mean, there's some that aren't. But for the most part, they're doing this for NAFTA. They have bought into this. They believe that it's an accomplished thing. It's been in the law for 20 years, and now they want to see this happen. They fundamentally don't have a problem with it any more than Pelosi has a problem with it. She says we've got a community that just happens to have a border that's not really effective anymore running through it. That's the way Boehner and these other people think of it, as well as the governors who are really not doing anything. We've had a token effort from the governor here in Texas, but that's all it is a token effort, and most of them haven't done anything. I don't think the Republican governor of Arizona has done anything about it. Let's go to Jeff in California. Jeff?
Oh, hi. Actually, it's Joe, but that's okay. Technology, gotta love it. I've came to the realization especially in light of the recent happenings down there on the border, is that there are people, they're here, they've been here for a very long time. The government, they're not going to do anything about it. My bad, if that rustles any jimmies. But the point is that those that are here right now, if I knew Spanish, I would be down there at those shelters right now, educating them on the fact that this government is just as BS as their government that they fled. And the goal would be to essentially wake them up and turn them against Big Daddy government. We could teach these people to become independent, right?
Exactly.
Not depend on government handouts.
And that's the key, Brendan, when you said if you spoke Spanish. See, I believe that that's a large part of why they're bringing them in. I believe that they want to get people as early as possible who are going to be as difficult as possible to assimilate into the country because they want to bring down a collapse, because they want to fundamentally transform America, and they want to give these people a free ride. They want to give them lavish welfare on them so that these people will be loyal to them. I think that's what's going on. I think that's an important point of part of what's going on. It is a battle, but I think that's the difficulty, is that we don't speak Spanish, and that they're going to bring them in and educate them away from their family, away from their culture, and certainly not connected to family, and certainly not connected to our legal traditions here in this country. Let's go. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. You want anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, but my point is that is the case. But there are individuals who are aware of what's going on, that do know Spanish, that can at least make a dent in that.
Oh, absolutely. It's an information war. We haven't necessarily lost that information war, but it makes it even more difficult when they bring in people that speak a different language, and when they bring in very young children. That's the thing. You've always heard the phrase, give me a child when he's the age of fill in the blank, a very young age, and he's mine for life. That's the point of government education. That's been the point of government education since the time of Plato's Republic. Now that goes on steroids. And, of course, there's also the fact that they're trying to bring in people who, if they're at a young age, that they're not going to be able to support themselves, because that brings about an economic collapse, an economic crisis, and crisis is always an opportunity for people like Nancy Pelosi and David Petraeus and others who want to fundamentally change America. Thank you, Brendan in Idaho. Let's go to Ronnie in Texas. Ronnie.
Thank you, sir. Yes, my comment is that Ross Perot's phrase of the giant sucking sound, thanks to so-called President, so-called Peace Prize, has become now a deafening roar.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What do you think we should do about it?
Well, we ought to see if we can get Ross Perot in the White House somehow, or we'll wish back that or just think about it. Just imagine if Ross Perot had been allowed to win.
Well, here's the thing that concerns me, Ronnie, and that is that if we look at the way they rolled this thing out, they enacted it as a law, and people, if they had enacted it as a law, as NAFTA, as a trade agreement, if they had done that and immediately opened the borders like they're doing now, do you think that would have woken people up? I think it would have. But instead, what they do is they enact the law and they let it sit there. And they believe that that gives it legitimacy over time. And what I'm concerned about is the things that we've seen with FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the fact that they have these secret court decisions, the fact that they have the NDAA. They have put the infrastructure of tyranny in, and they're going to exercise that just like they exercised NAFTA.
Alex Jones here to break down some exciting developments in the area of research concerning supplemental iodine. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. And I used some of the mainline iodine supplements, and they upset my stomach, and I had some issues with it. Until I discovered a product being developed by Dr. Group, who I was already interviewing as an expert on my radio show, and I began taking the product before he actually rolled it out. You now know it as Survival Shield True Nascent Iodine that your body can really absorb. Then, about a year ago, he said, listen, if you think this is powerful, I'm going to come out with rare earth, deep earth crystals that are incredibly powerful that no one else has as a source for their iodine, from between 7,000 and 12,000 feet, literally drilled out of the ground. You put it on a hot plate, and it turns into the pure gas. No one else has 99.99% pure iodine. And the results that I personally have had have been life-changing. I was over 270 pounds. And with the iodine, exercise, and better diet, I have lost now more than 50 pounds total, and I'm continuing to lose the weight. I have more energy, my libido, all this crap came out of my skin. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. This is innovating. This is trailblazing. And the best part is it helps fund Infowars.com, the radio show, the TV show, the whole media operation promoting true libertarian ideas. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox special at InfoWarsLife.com.